in royal history, there's so many things that have gone on that people forget about. And, as I often say, nothing is new. It's all just been done before, repackaged in a different way. Today we see the sort of charity single as a thing, don't we? There, people put a charity single out and now it's all these stars and they're donating their time and all that sort of stuff. And you try and sort of think, yes, the good thing. But way back, of course, way back, His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, really was the Prince of Pops as ever. Let me explain. Morning, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today. Yes, I do think this about things. It's just the thing, isn't it? Everything has literally been done before. When you watch brilliant movies, you look at them and you think, wow, how did that come around? Or could you make that again? And, I know I often say this to all the chums, but it's, think about a movie like Rear Window. You couldn't remake that today, even though it's a brilliant Hitchcock film, because of the technology. She would have a mobile phone, Grace Kelly, sorry, a mobile phone and stuff like that. Everybody would see messages, CCTV, totally different, isn't it, But when you literally start something at the very epicenter of that sort of thing and you think, okay, I'm now going to do something that's going to change, of course, a lot of charitable work. And this really is what happened with His Royal Highness, the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip. Now, as many people know who watch the show, huge fan of Prince Philip. I thought he was the Queen's mouthpiece. I really did. He could say things that, she must have thought. But of course, him said, oh, just get on with it, or let's get through, or come on, move on. I think that's really what she liked about him. He could be the cheeky one while she remained serene, calm, and collected, But of course, he did many things. As I said, he was the man that we have to thank for the wonderful coronation, literally in 1953, by allowing the BBC TV cameras in. But long before that, he'd pushed well ahead. Oh yes, even though he'd faced a lot of backlash, because one of his charities, all about playing fields, which was very instrumental in the early 1950s, literally broke new ground. Prince Philip didn't necessarily get on with all the courtiers inside Buckingham Palace. Not like today with Meghan and Harry. No, he just wanted to bring the things into the 20th century. He could see, even as I've mentioned to you before, King Edward VII, he saw that the media was the way forward, and it could reach so many variants that you couldn't necessarily reach in a speech or indeed a note into the Times or the Telegraph. And this is exactly why he decided to do this. You see, he'd met Frank Sinatra way back in 1948 at a film premiere and a charitable event. Frank had said that he'd be very keen to get involved. And as I've told you before, when Frank Sinatra came back to London in 1951 and then 1953, he wasn't at the epicenter of stardom that we know today. But very cleverly, and all thanks to the beautiful Ava Gardner, no doubt catching Prince Philip's eye, as he was always partial to a pretty actress, let's be honest, the bottom line was that Frank and he became good friends, and Frank agreed to make this particular single. And what was fascinating about this particular single was, well, not only did Frank agree to do it for free and donate all the royalties, but more importantly, he felt, well, it needed a little bit of extra dazzle. So he suggested to Prince Philip at the time, well, would you like to sing a chorus or two with me? Now, can you imagine Frank Sinatra offering to do that? Philip said, oh, no, I don't have a good enough voice. So they came up with this. And this basically was the idea to get the single going. It was a 15-second introduction to the good works of the charity. And then, of course, the Duke, literally thanking Frank Sinatra for taking the time out to put the record and the idea together. This, some people might say, may be the very first royal endorsed charity single. It did very well for many years, making a lot of money behind the scenes, and was played at various events. It's funny, because everybody thinks Frank Sinatra was supremely confident, but not necessarily. At an event many years later, while the Queen and the Duke were over in America, naturally they got on very well. But according to a good friend of mine, Dionne Warwick, the brilliant singer of so many wonderful hits, she said that in the lineup while waiting to meet the Queen, Frank suddenly became uncharacteristically very nervous. And she said, well, what were you nervous about? You've met her before. He said, this is the Queen, And so sort of looked and said, yeah, well, I'm a little bit nervous, but, no, it's fine. And of course, he took to the stage and sang I Get a Kick Out of You, looking directly at the Queen, and they got on incredibly well, as I said. And this was for a Reagan sort of event, should I say, Mr. Ronald Reagan, the former president of the United States of America. But quite frankly, the very first moment of really a royal charity endorsed single took place, all thanks to Frank and, of course, the late and brilliant Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. He really was forward thinking. And I think the thing that you have to remember is just think of the battles that he must have had to endure just to get this thing off the ground. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.